And welcome, everybody. This is Dom from Upstate Supernatural, and I would like to thank everybody for tuning in. We have another episode of Interview with a Skeptic. And for everybody that's viewing in, whether it's through YouTube or Live Paranormal or Ustream or so forth, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest. And if you'd like to let everybody know who you are, or you don't need to, if you just want to kind of let everybody know your background a little bit.
My name is Jim Brown. I've been doing this paranormal research for about the mid-1970s, and I approach it from a skeptical point of view. So use scientific programs, that type of thing, to try to get to the bottom of what everyone is experiencing. So, probably the first thing we need to do would be to define exactly what the difference between a skeptic and a cynic is versus the believer. We're all pretty sure what the believer is, but a lot of people aren't sure what they consider the skeptic as an unbeliever, and that is not true. The difference on a skeptic is a skeptic will believe, but he has to see first. Okay, show me the evidence, show me some proof, and then I'll follow right along with it. But just because someone says something doesn't make it so. There's too many other things that have to be ruled out first. And that is the way a skeptic approaches every investigation.
Now, with all the TV shows and programs popping up all the time, has it ever made you curious to whether or not there is a truth within the paranormal, or if it's more of it being fabricated?
Well, a lot of the television shows and that I believe are fabricated simply for ratings. I am not saying now that there's something not going on out there, but it's the way it's portrayed on the television, and for all the hype and the drama that they go through. For the most part, a normal investigation doesn't work the way a TV show portrays it. It's a long, tedious process, and usually you get absolutely nothing, which doesn't make for very good television. So for that reason, I believe, is why they do it. But they like to boost up the drama to keep the ratings up there, which I think the biggest problem we have with a lot of the television, and where it falls into the actual investigation, is a lot of people out there believe that when an investigator comes in, they expect him to do it the same way they've seen it done on television, and whenever that happens, when it doesn't happen, rather, he begins to wonder, does this guy know what he's doing or not? In reality, it's a step-by-step process. You take your measurements, take your readings, do whatever you're going to do, build your evidence up, and as you get evidence, you'll build on that evidence, and take the case. They let the case run where it's going to go. You can't control what's going to happen. The case will determine the direction that the investigation takes.
Now, when somebody talks about the paranormal, I really do like this question. A lot of people, when they're talking about the paranormal, think of aliens, think of ghosts. What is it that you think of when you hear the term paranormal?
I think of anything that simply can't be explained. It goes everywhere. Like you said, the ghosts, the aliens fit into the category, but it also covers over into the area of the Bigfoot research, the cryptid, the out-of-place animal report, and the cases of just general strangeness, sounds, things like that. Anything that doesn't have a clear explanation is paranormal until such time as it can be identified. I investigate, basically, I would do a lot on the EVP and UFO end of it, but I branch into the other areas because I believe that sometimes, or some cases, they may be connected, that it may simply be a matter of perception. Some people may perceive it as a ghost, someone else may perceive the same phenomena as an alien. And that's where the investigation will have to rule out which is which, or if there is a difference.
Now, do you think actually the paranormal or spirits or ghosts is through a person's mind? Like that they make it up themselves by something they want to believe in?
Definitely in some cases, but not all cases. I don't want to let anybody get the idea that I'm going to say that everybody out there is not seeing or that they're just making it up. I believe that's a very real phenomenon that has to be considered, because most definitely preconception, especially on the part of the believer, comes into play. Because if you go into the situation, something happens that you don't quite understand. If you're a strong believer, right away they jump to the paranormal, and they haven't ruled out anything yet. So yeah, in that case, the mind does play a part. But on the other hand, if you have something occur and you win, you rationally explain it, or try to explain it rather, and you can't explain it after you've ruled out everything else, well then maybe you're getting into something that reaches the realm of paranormal. But the mind definitely plays a large part in it in some cases, but not all cases.
Now, have you ever been to a location or been in a situation that somebody would say was a haunted area? And did you have something happen there that you truly couldn't explain in a rational explanation?
Definitely. I have been on cases that I can't explain. I have seen objects move of their own accord. I have captured EVP under such conditions that even with all the analysis that I can put the recording through, that I can't explain. But it's extremely rare. And in some cases, I'll put my best case would be a combination of EVP at the same time as a lamp is thrown across the room. That was witnessed by there were 5 people present at the time, and none of us could explain it. It was not hoax. We have the hard evidence is the lamp. We have the photographs, of course, of a broken lamp. No one saw it. And we have the EVP, which was captured at the time. Now, something like that, after going through all the analysis, that's what makes it, I feel, legitimate. First, it's just like anything else. If we attempt to rule it out, it's a common explanation. No strings were attached to the lamp to throw it. The only person in the room was a child. And we were in the room within 30 seconds after the event happened. So there was no physical evidence that anybody had attempted to hoax it, and we could account for everyone present in the building at the time. So it's things like that add credibility to a case. But just because someone says it happened doesn't necessarily mean it. After you get the evidence and analyze it, that's where the skeptical part comes in.
Now, as a child, did you ever feel or believe in ghosts or things within the paranormal?
As a child, probably just a casual. I wasn't really involved in it as far as that it affected my lifestyle or anything like that. I mean, most children at some point in time, they're the ghosts or the Caspers, that type of thing that float around the haunted house, that type of stuff. But no, I never really got into it. I got into this. There was really no one occurrence that got me interested. It was just a simple matter of the question, what does everyone see, and can I explain it? And then my investigation went on from there. It's not like I had one case that this is one that caused everything, or this is what triggered it. I personally have never experienced anything as far as a direct sighting. The one I just referred to was the closest that I come to something, and that was done. I captured DVP, but I was marking from another room. As far as actually seeing anything, UFO, anything like that, I haven't seen a UFO. I haven't seen an alien. But I don't question that some people out there have experienced something.
Now, a theory that I've actually had a lot of people kind of pass towards me is, as we get older, we are kind of taught or conditioned to believe that spirits or ghosts don't exist. What is your thoughts on that theory? Do you think it's practical, or do you think it's kind of just a theory that people are trying to use to more or less relay why they think they forgot, or why they don't, why others don't believe in it? Just kind of curious what you think of the theory.
I don't think that an adult, or I should back up. I should say I don't think that a child is more perceptive to the paranormal. I think that a child is in a situation where they're more easily fooled by commonplace occurrences. And of course, the child's going to see something that the child can't explain in their own mind. They consider that paranormal, where as an adult you look at it and say, well, that wasn't that, it was the wind caused it or something else. Which doesn't mean to say that everything happens along those lines. But some things, I think, as the adult, it's just a more mature mindset that you kind of put it down for that reason. Now, I also think, though, that with a more mature mindset, some people are going to be less susceptible to preconceptions, things like that, because they've rationalized things out and have pretty much explained some things away. But not, like I say, not necessarily all, but they have explained some things away. So I think for that reason, probably fewer adults will see the ghost, where the child may be more inclined to come up with something that may fit the category.
And then a theory that I think a lot of ghost hunters like to try to relay is that a lot of skeptics, maybe they're afraid to accept that it exists. And that is that a possibility of why maybe a skeptic would think that they don't? Or it probably depends on the type of skeptic, in an essence.
Yeah, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, see, that's the difference. Like I mentioned, a skeptic, I'll believe it. You can show me some proof, I'll accept it. I would like nothing better to see it. Now, the only difference is the believer versus a skeptic. The believer is convinced that it's a ghost presence. The skeptic will look at it and say, can it be explained any other way? And since most things can be explained by natural occurrences, they will see fewer occurrences of anything. It's just like UFOs. I'm sort of an amateur astronomer, that type of thing. I know what's going on in the sky. Consequently, when I look at the sky, someone else may see a comet go over and think it's a UFO, where I look at it and can right away identify what it is. Planets, that type of thing. I keep track of what planets are visible at any given time. Things like that, where someone else may see that bright light in the sky that wasn't there the night before, and just as a believer, they'll attribute it to a UFO, where the skeptic will look at it and say, well, that's Venus, or that's Jupiter. Things like that, that they get to identify a lot of things as a skeptic. But if it doesn't fit the category of the planet, doesn't fit the normal things, then you may have a UFO. Which is why I think the skeptic, by simply identifying a lot of the things that we do encounter, rules out a lot of the foes of paranormal. But from my investigations, I would say 95% of the cases that I've worked have been resolved as natural phenomena, which probably flies in the face of a lot of believers who think there are ghosts around every corner, and all that. In reality, very few cases even approach the paranormal if you take the time to rationally go through the evidence and determine what it is.
And a question I like to ask this for ghost hunters or even skeptics as well. What is your thoughts about what the afterlife actually is? Like, what's your theory on the afterlife?
Well, my theory, as far as my belief and everything, and a lot of people don't want to get into religion, I consider myself Christian, and I do take the traditional Christian belief. In the afterlife, the soul moves on to judgment. And I don't think that what we're encountering as ghosts are anything related. Personally, I don't think it's anything related to death. I'm not saying it doesn't occur, but I'm thinking that we're looking, sort of barking up the wrong tree when we start thinking about, well, that's the spirit or the soul of Uncle Charlie that passed away 3 years ago, because I think Uncle Charlie has gone on to his reward and has no connection or no capability to come back to the present, to our plane of existence, which doesn't rule out the possibility that there may have been residual energy left behind by Uncle Charlie when he was on the earth. Doesn't rule out the possibility of an interdimensional being that may have nothing at all to do with dying or death, even an alien. It doesn't involve any kind of energy which may be forming or causing the witness to have a form of mass hallucination. There may be some form of energy out there that is causing a lot of people to see the same thing. Of course, if that's happening, then that in and of itself is something worth investigating. But I think whenever we confine ourselves to just the ghost is the spirit of someone that's passed, I think we're too confining to that. And I think that's what's holding us back, why we're not making any progress, because very few are willing to go to that area and forego that possibility that maybe it's something totally alien or totally different than anything we've even considered. And I think that's the avenue where I think eventually the breakthrough is going to occur, and I think we're going to find that it's something that no one has ever thought of. Multidimensional. That's the area that I seem to be looking toward right now for an explanation.
You can still hear me, okay, right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. There's a theory that spirits or ghosts are from a different dimension. That to them we are ghosts or spirits, and that they are just living their lives. What do you think about that theory? Is it an aspect of maybe ghost hunters just trying to pull the thread to try to figure out just a way for them to coexist, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not really quite sure what you mean by the question. The way you phrased it.
Individuals will say that the spirits or ghosts are from a different dimension, opposed to being from where we are, like being on the dimensional plane that we're at. A lot of people will say they're from a different dimension, which they perhaps are trying to see us, from their dimension. They see us as dead instead of us seeing them as dead.
I would be more inclined to accept that theory than I would the traditional ghost theory of one of us that have passed over. I would be more inclined because I have seen no evidence to refute that, nor have I seen any solid evidence to support it. Just like I haven't seen any solid evidence to either refute or support the traditional ghost theory, but it's a very real possibility that I wouldn't discount it. The multiple dimensions, because we really don't know what how a being, say, on our dimensions 1, 2, 3, and 4, the height, width, depth, and time, how would we perceive something in the let's say the 7th dimension or something? I mean, how can we perceive that? How would it come across to us? I don't know. It may come across as a ghost. It may be just some kind of an energy field. Who's to say? Well, no one's ever got to the point that with any scientific testing that has said this is how it happened. There's mathematical calculations that said this might happen, but nobody's been able to confirm it. So yeah, we have, at this point in time, we do have to keep that open.
And now I'm going to actually open it up to any of the viewers. If you have any questions for the Skeptic, again, keep in mind, I'd like to keep this respectful and so forth. I don't think anybody's going to say anything that's not. But you also, we got to really kind of talk on the phone and so forth. And you have a very extensive background with electronics and audio and so forth. Would you like to evolve a little bit with that? Because I remember we were talking about how you've gone through tons and tons of audio, and you've only captured maybe 4 things. Maybe it was 4 or 5 things that you thought were actual anomalies.
Yeah, I use as far as recording for EVP, that's sort of one of the areas that I do considerable research in, and I don't use the traditional idea of getting out with a voice recorder, that type of thing. My system is actually set up that I use high gain amplifiers, I use sensors, I use inductive pickups, various microphones, depending on the project and all that. But I attempt to do direct, real-time communication, because this amplifier feeds to a set of headphones where I can listen at the same time as I'm speaking. The recorder's there, but the recorder is secondary. It's only there simply to keep a log of what transpires. And as a recorder, I like to use a 4-channel, it's a multi-track recording system that allows me to separate, so I can put each microphone or sensor on its own track, and then later I can analyze that when I take it back to the lab. And for analysis, everything here is done in analog. I use the spectrum analyzers. I have the oscilloscopes, everything here in the lab. And rather than the traditional trying to clean them up, that type of thing, because I don't even work with an EVP that someone has attempted to clean up. But what I'll do is look at the individual frequencies present. I'll determine which ones are within the speech band, and I can separate those frequencies using an equalizer. And then various programs I can amplify or reject those frequencies and selectively pick and choose the ones I want. After I've listened to it that way, then I'll compare the audio to known human speech patterns. Looking at the phonemes that make up each word and make sure each phoneme is actually present, because one of the biggest problems that most people with EVP have, they'll claim to hear a certain word or certain phrase, but when you actually break it down, half the phonemes that they say are there, when you try to find them on an oscilloscope and actually view them, they don't exist. It's just how the mind is filling in the difference. So this system has basically eliminated the possibility of pareidolia, which is one of the biggest problems with EVP. You hear the thing, and say, well, what did it really say? And then the mind will start filling it in. The difference with the visual analysis on a scope, if it's not there, that trace doesn't show that dip on the scope. If it's there, it may show that peak, and you can visually see it on the scope. It's either there or it isn't. If it's not there, it's not there, and the mind is simply filling it in, which means that most supposed EVP, and even the ones, especially the ones that on TV that you can half understand, they are not EVP at all. It's all pareidolia, it's a background noise. There is no message in that. They'll swear it is, but it's just a matter of the mind filling it in. And then what a lot of people will do is run it through their computer and attempt to clean it. And what you actually do when you digitally try to clean it is the process adds artifacts. And if you do it right, those artifacts can fill in those missing phonemes. So you've just created the message on your computer. It wasn't what was there originally. That's why I don't do any digital analysis whatsoever. It's not cheap to do it on a oscilloscope and the spectrum analyzers. I mean, you're talking several $1,000s worth of equipment. But that's what has to be done if you're going to do professional analysis of audio.
Now, not to pick on the individual that I just remember the conversation we had, and I don't even know the individual's name, but there was somebody that found evidence, and I think it was down near the Two Towers. It was 9/11 Two Towers. Would you like to talk a little bit about that one? Because that I found absolutely fascinating, and I think it really is a relevant aspect that should be brought out.
Well, I personally, I don't know whether the EVP you're referring to, I haven't heard it. So I don't know what it is. I can't say whether they got anything or whether they didn't get anything. I haven't done the analysis on it, so I'm going to have to kind of bow out of that one because without actually doing the analysis, I don't want to pass judgment whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I'm going to stay on the side. But if someone would want to get that or a good, full spectrum, full audio spectrum copy of that recording, I'd be more than happy to take a listen to it and see what I come up with.
I was the one where it sounded like there was something there, but it was actually a dog whimper.
Which one? Now that has happened on more than one occasion where we've heard.
Okay, I remember on the phone we were talking about it, and I just think that was a great story to. If you'd like to talk a little bit more about that one.
Okay, I have a couple of those that wasn't from the. It wasn't up at the World Trade Center location. This came in from another location altogether. I actually have several of them. But there again, you'll hear a dog whimper on a recording like that. I don't have it up that I could play it or anything like that right now, but I have several of them here. I dig through the archives, see if I can find one there. But what will happen is you'll listen to something like that, and a dog's throat is different than a human throat. And if you use that on the oscilloscope, you can actually see the harmonics from the vocal cords. And the dog's vocal cords are different than a human. And that's one way to separate out some of the possibilities that can give you a false positive. with the size and shape of the dog's throat will cause a slightly different cadence or slightly different nuances to the audio that comes out.
And for for new individuals that may be interested in the field, I have always kind of felt that a skeptic's point of view. I have a bunch of friends that are skeptics, and their insights and their ideas have actually helped me kind of evolve as an investigator. I'm just curious if there's any things that you would like to try to pass along within the field. Being a skeptic, being somebody that's also, researching, is there certain things you would like to try to acknowledge or teach to maybe somebody that's interested or new in the field?
The main thing there is how you approach any problem. It's a matter of you get your evidence or what you claim to be your evidence, and then debunk it any way possible. Get others to try to debunk it. Everybody takes the opinion of the debunker as being the bad guy. In reality, the debunker is the good guy, and you want as many of them on your side as you can. You take it apart and you look at the evidence and say, all right, I think this is what it might be, but can it be something else? And then you have to apply that and say, well, it's not that because, and find the reason why. It's simply a matter of going through and basically taking your evidence and tearing it apart any way you possibly can. I think too many people, the new ones especially, they get a recording, they get it on the equipment that's substandard, and they think, oh, I've got the greatest thing ever. And in reality, whenever it gets into the laboratory somewhere, it falls apart, and it's kind of depressing to them whenever it happens. But it's the way it has to be done, because you actually want your evidence refuted. You only want to consider what can't be refuted, and that's going to actually be very little. For the most part, most evidence won't stand up to scrutiny. If you don't figure out what's wrong with it, somebody else will, and when they do, they've done you a favor. They're not somebody trying to pick an argument with you. Take the opportunity to learn how they debunked it, and then apply it the next time you come across the same evidence. That'll make you a better investigator. I've had a lot of my stuff, so I thought I got something. Somebody will look at that and say, no, you didn't. But it's not just a matter of saying no, because the skeptic has to look at that evidence. If he's going to say it isn't what you claim it is, he has to provide the evidence and the reasoning behind it. I can't just say, just refute it because you say I don't like it. It isn't what you think it is. Require that I give you the reason why it's not what you think it is. Just simply my saying it's no better than you saying it is. But that's the way all evidence has to be taken apart, any way possible.
And not to unless you'd like to. I know you work with other individuals, and if you'd like to give a shout out for them in the capacity of like what research group it is you guys work with, or what you guys call yourself, more than welcome to.
Any group, they can go to my website. Any legitimate group. I don't have any particular group. I'm an independent researcher. We do have an association. There's 8 of us here, and each one of us, we're all independent researchers. Independent research associates is what it is, but that is not a group. The association itself doesn't even have a website. But in my case, I do have a web page, and some of the others have their own personal web pages. And each one of us work cases on our own. But as an association, if I get into an area where I don't know what I'm doing, say for instance I was to get into a case, say some hard evidence was recovered, and I need a metallurgist. I'm not a metallurgist. I wouldn't know where to begin. But I have an associate that is. So I'll gather the information or bring him in as an associate or as a consultant on that case. Likewise, if he gets a case that requires audio analysis, he may not have a clue where to go with that. But I'll go in there and help on his case. So it's not your typical group that you can contact. Anyone that wants to contact me can do it via my webpage at jimsdestinations.com. And there's a form on there. You can submit evidence through that form. If you have EVP you want analyzed, you can submit it right through that webpage.
And how long have you been researching within the paranormal field? I know you've been with the electronics and that type of stuff for a long time, but how long have you been researching within the paranormal?
Well, I actually started locally here in 1973. We had numerous UFO sightings, and that kind of piqued my interest at that point. Now, I didn't start, full-blown investigations at that point in time. The association was put together in 1984. We've been actively working as an association since then. But, any time since after 1973 was when I first got an interest in it and first started investigating local cases. Right now, I take cases in from anywhere all over the country. It's just a matter of what's there and what it is. And like I say, I'll work with any groups that have anything that want to submit. Go to the web page, submit the request for a submission form, and it'll come back to you. It'll explain how to submit the evidence that you have. There's some questions, some things have to be answered before I take on something like that. For instance, EVP work, if it was captured on a little, cheap voice recorder, there's not much I can do with it because it lacks the fidelity and the bandwidth needed to do a full-scale analysis. It's basically no point in wasting anybody's time trying to analyze something like that, so I probably wouldn't even consider that. But if it was captured under good conditions using quality equipment, and, where we can get the background information on the location, things like that, I'll work with any group that wants to submit.
And how much time would you say you've probably invested within trying to research all this?
Oh, I do it just about daily. I'm retired now, so I worked in the electronics field for about 40 years. I'm retired now, so I work on this several hours throughout each day. Some cases that come to me through stuff that the consultants or the other associates have submitted to me for advice, anything like that, and anything comes into the web page. But generally, it takes for a submission like that, it'll take about a week from the time it's submitted till I can get turned around and get to it. But there again depends on the type of evidence it is and just how involved the process becomes. Because that's the interesting thing about it. To do a full-scale analysis on a recording, if someone submits a recording, generally it will take me about an hour for every minute of recording that they have ever. Minute of audio will take an hour to do the first analysis of, and if it looks really promising or like there's something might be there, it may take as much as 3 or 4 hours to do that as that 1 minute of recording. So obviously I can't do a lot of analysis without first screening. There's some tricks to sort out what's there. Pretty much find get it down to the point where what we're going to be concerned with.
And as a person that's a skeptic, are you hoping to find out that the paranormal is real, or are you kind of just want to finally know for sure? Kind of what. Well, I guess I'm asking what your pursuit in it. You know what I mean?
That's where the skeptic comes into play versus the cynic. The cynic wants to disprove anything. The cynic will look up at the sky, and if you tell him it's blue, he'll tell you it isn't. And it won't. But the skeptic will look at it and will take the time to look at the data present, and when it turns out that what he claims turns out to be true, he's perfectly content. As a skeptic, I'd be perfectly happy to find out, yes, it's paranormal, but I'm just as happy to find out that it was happen to be an electrical disturbance or something like that. In either case, we've got the answer, and what we're looking for is the answer. We're not predisposed to look for either looking for ghosts or looking to there are no ghosts. The skeptic just simply wants the thing answered, whatever it is.
And for real investigators out there, what should they use? Like what should an investigator? What kind of recorder should they use? What type of should they look at the weather patterns? Should they look at like barometric pressure or stuff like that? You know what I mean? It's the question some of us kind of are curious about.
Certainly, yeah. First of all, you hit on several areas there. The first thing, no matter what the situation is, be it a ghost, UFO sighting, or whatever, you want to record the environmental conditions, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, any wind, direction of winds, anything like that, time of day. Even the you want to be able to record temperatures as they were for the preceding 12 hours, because temperature changes can cause things to happen. So you want that information with all, no matter what. Now, as far as recorders go, I have the information on my website. I can't make recommendations for use this make or this model. I've tested a couple of them here in the lab, and the ones that I know what ones work in the lab, but that isn't to say that that's the only one that will work. So rather than tell you that to use the particular recorder, what I will say is there are certain specifications that the recorder has to meet. And for digital recorder, if anybody wants to write this down real quick, I can come off to you there. First of all, you have to sample it at least 96 kilobytes per second or higher. 96K is the minimum. You want a recorder that has a 24-bit A to D conversion process. Voice recorders generally only have 16. You want the 24, because the 24, if anybody's really confused, to compare that with photography, it would be the same as having a 5-megapixel camera versus a 15-megapixel camera. Which one's going to give you the clearest picture? The same thing as the audio equivalent of the number of pixels. Third thing is what recording method it uses. All recorders, to save space, have to, most recorders, I should say, I shouldn't say all, there are two methods of recording. Most voice recorders, to save space, use the DELP method. That's compressed, code excited linear progression. I'm not going to do all that. Versus pulse code modulation, PCM. You want PCM. PCM does not compress, but it also takes a lot more memory. The files will be much bigger with PCM. But PCM recording doesn't have all the artifacts created by the compression process. Fourth thing, when you get your final recording that you're going to record your file, you want to record it in a WAV format, not an MP3. MP3 is great if you just want to share it to your friends and neighbors, but if you want to actually analyze it, it has to be in a WAV format, uncompressed. There again, it's going to be a huge file. So you're going to have voice recorders are pretty much ruled out. What you have to do is go with a true stereo, and that's the other thing, stereo recording. You want 2 channels at least. Preferably to something you can put external mics to, although that's not really a requirement. It's a lot better if you can. But you're going to use a digital stereo recorder. Recorded the cheapest one I have seen anywhere that will meet that criteria. There may be others out there. I know the old H2, the Zoom H2 will meet those minimum specs, provided it's used in its highest quality mode. Now I use here, the one that I have here is a Fostex FR2, which is a bit pricey, but it'll also meet the specs. But the Zoom H2, and I think the H4 will probably also meet the specs. I haven't tested it, but I have tested the H2 in the lab. And under lab conditions, it's properly shielded, will meet specs for recording. But which isn't to say there aren't others out there that will meet the same specs. The important thing there is to meet those criteria rather than pick a make and model. Just meet those physical specs, and you'll have a recorder suitable for EVP work.
And I'm sure you've seen a lot of this out in the field. What do you think about spirit boxes with communication? Do you think it's a probable aspect to try to do communication, or do you think it's more pareidolia?
Well, my term for spirit boxes is a pareidolia box. As far as any spirit box or anything that creates white noise or creates noise on the recording like that is pure junk. And there's no other way to put it. Because for pareidolia to work, you have to have noise. To take the average spirit box where it's scanning through, the ones that scan through the band, they change channels about 10 times per second, which is about 100 milliseconds. Which you get that every tenth of a second. The interesting thing about that is it's the same cadence as human speech pattern. So the box itself has just supplied the major factor that is needed to create pareidolia. It's put the cadence right to it, right there, because the average voice, every tenth of a second, it takes a tenth of a second. If you pick any word, each phoneme will last about anywhere from 80 to 120 milliseconds, depending on what they are. And that's why I say the spirit boxes are just pure garbage. No investigator, I won't even consider evidence collected on a spirit box, because I've put them up here in the lab and they don't work. The second thing about a spirit box that makes them irrelevant is, how does the spirit manipulate this box? If you're going to assume the spirit box works, the spirit's also going to have the knowledge of how to manipulate this box to get the box to say what the spirit wants it to say. And that's going to require that the spirit, we're going to make another assumption here because there's no proof that spirits have anything to do with EM fields whatsoever, but if we go on the assumption that they do, that's still going to negate the spirit box, because now the spirit has to create an EM field at the precise level at the box that's required to generate the particular phoneme it wants to make. And all EM fields have a problem with that. It's called the inverse square law of physics. To make it simple, it simply means that a source farther from the receiver is going to be weaker at the receiver, just like a radio station. As you get farther from the radio station, the signal gets weaker. Now, for a spirit to generate, say it needs a 10 millivolt signal to cause the spirit box to respond. If their spirit is not at the precise distance from the box to generate 10 millivolts, if it's a little too far away, it's only going to generate 5. That's going to give the wrong phoneme. Or if it's too close, it's going to generate 20. So it has to know how strong the field is. It has to know how well the box is and how well the circuitry in the box is at receiving that field. There's just too many variables in there. The whole process can't work. It's a fallacy.
Now, what about items? I do ask this of other ghost hunters when I do the interviews with them. Items such as like a Ouija board or trigger object style things. Do you think they? And I know there is a huge separation. A spirit board between a trigger object are totally different. But what do you think is the relevance with a spirit board? Do you think it has a probability? I mean, for myself, I'd like to see it move by itself for me to think any probability with it.
You hit it right there. If the spirit's going to manipulate that board, then we're going to set the board down to the floor and step away from it. And I want to see that board and everything. I want to see that planchette loop all by itself. Whenever I see that happen, then I would say, maybe we got something here. Same thing goes with a trigger object. If you set the trigger object, the blinking flashlights, that type of thing. I've done experiments on that. So far, I've had absolutely zero success. So what I did for a trigger object, which used the same phenomena or the same requirements as the flashlight, all I did was 2 pieces of metal very close together, and all the spirit had to do was either create a magnetic field, which would cause those 2 elements to attract each other and close the circuit, or push one together. Any number of things could close that contact and thus turn on light. The trouble is, it sits on the shelf and doesn't do anything. So, do trigger objects work? I don't know. Some people swear by them, but I just haven't seen it. I won't say it doesn't, but I haven't seen any evidence that it does. So, in that regard, I think the Ouija board and the trigger object would be very similar, because both require a physical movement of an object that could be observed. As far as getting the message across from the Ouija board, no, I think it's just it's a game. It's a parlor game is all it is, as far as I'm concerned. I don't see any particular danger to them. I'm not going to say don't use one, but if you do, the same as with the Magic 8 Ball. Play a game with it and have some fun, but beyond that, don't believe anything it says.
Is there any closing notes that you would like to share with anybody about, like, just your thoughts and so forth about the paranormal? where it is now and where you'd like to see it be?
So I would like to see a more skeptical approach to things. Obviously, I mean, I want to see people, especially the believer who says that there are ghosts out there. I want to see that believer come into the laboratory. If you say you can talk with spirits or something, or communicate with spirits, come on in the lab. We'll hook you up to some test equipment, and we'll see if there's any physical, anything physical about that might support that theory. Because if you're communicating with something, then there should be some kind of a physical attribute or something measurable occur, be it a brainwave change or something. But I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm not saying that the psychic has no abilities, that type of thing, because clearly some of them get it right. But from a skeptical point of view, I'd like to see a study done that actually can pin it down and say, all right, when these conditions are present, the skeptic can be, or the psychic can be believed. When these conditions aren't present, they're out there simply guessing. And if we can figure out what those conditions are, then we've actually made progress. But that's the approach I'm taking with the whole thing. There's definitely something going on. Too many people are seeing things to say that there's nothing to them. But there again, what it is wide open. That's what I'd like to see. More emphasis placed on methodology, the study of how it's done, and a more scientific approach rather than just going out there running around with your cameras taking pictures of mist and fog and orbs and that type of stuff and saying you got something paranormal. I think that does a disservice.
Actually, a question that just popped into the chat is, what would it take beyond personal experience for you to believe that a ghost exists?
I would have to see like I say, not just personal experience. I mean, obviously I can't be everywhere. I mean, I don't have to personally see it, but I have to see that it was done and the evidence that was captured. There has to be some form of evidence. If you got the picture, fine. But there again, or if you got the EVP, that's great. But if it was done under conditions that it can't be refuted, I'm not saying I've got the only EVPs in the world, but I've also done EVP for others that have been legitimate. And by legitimate, I'm saying I can't discount them as something to refute the claim, in other words. So yeah, I would believe that there's something going on, but it's going to have to be done with under a controlled condition or using the proper type of equipment, and the stuff that most people are using out there these days doesn't hold up to scrutiny. So it's going to be a matter of how you capture the evidence, not just the evidence itself, because if it's captured under a reliable manner, the records kept and the environmental conditions supplied along with it, then maybe you've got something.
Well, I mean, this was brought up in another Skeptic interview as well. And, how many investigators actually know their equipment in and out? You know what I mean? How it works, how well it works. And, I after hearing that from one of the other interviews, I definitely, it pushes you to want to know your stuff even more. It pushes you to want to know, okay, this is what's going to do this if this happens and so forth. But, I mean, I think as an investigator that's talking to skeptics, as an investigator that really would like to see the field grow, I personally think, and I'm sure you agree, I think we all need to have kind of an open mind in growth.
Certainly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We do have to know our equipment. That, I think, is one of the major things right there, is know your equipment and know what its limitations are. And that's the thing, even whenever you start using limitations, a lot of people make a joke about it in a way, but if it comes right down to it, within its limitation, even the K2 meter has a purpose. Now, there again, just because it gives a hit, it's so prone to errors that can you really depend on it? Not necessarily, but if your conditions are such you can tolerate, you're doing experiments that you can tolerate a few errors every once in a while, it might be perfectly fine to use. I personally wouldn't, because I have access to better equipment, but there again, it's just a matter of know the limitations. The voice recorder is great if you're going to use it for dictation or taking down note-taking or in this interview, something like that. For an EVP, no. because it doesn't have the sufficient bandwidth. But there again, if you want to use it for within its parameters as a voice recorder, which is what it's intended for in the first place, it'll do just fine. And you can use any one you want. A cheap one's just great because you don't put any EVP that happens to think the EVP on it is not that's probably not an EVP. There's no reason you have to go out and use $1,000 audio recorder to do a witness interview. But there again, you know what the limitations of each are and use it within its limitations. Same with the camera. These wide spectrum cameras everybody wants to use. The problem with that is the refraction index of the glass in the lens. No one glass can cover that wide of a bandwidth. Consequently, you have to have a different lens. If you want to do UV versus infrared versus visible light, you should have 3 different lenses. So forget the wide spectrum camera. It's great if you want to cover those bands, but get the right camera for it. Get a camera that has the proper lenses and then use it properly. Then your evidence that you capture is going to be much more reliable.
I would like to personally thank you for coming on, for doing the interview and talking to us, giving your insights and letting everybody kind of know where you're coming from, as a skeptic within the field.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad to be on. Anybody has any comments, questions, anybody wants to contact me can do so through my website. Like I said, it's at jimsdestinations.com. Just select the paranormal topic and everything's covered there. I go into a lot of the details, some of the things I went into here a little bit. I have the information reports and stuff on there that really goes into more depth.
All right, and I think that's it for the questions that I had. And I'd like to thank everybody for viewing in. I'd like to, I'm going to go ahead and check to see if there's any other questions that popped up. I'm not seeing any right now. But thank you so much for coming on. Thank you everybody for tuning in. And we will catch you the next time we catch you. So we have shows Thursday, Friday, and next Sunday as well. And hope to see everybody. Have a beautiful night. And talk to you later.